Morrel sighed deeply and passed his hand over his forehead, which was covered with perspiration. "So then, sir," said Morrel, "you hold bills of mine." "Yes, and for a considerable sum." "What is the amount?" asked Morrel with a voice he strove to render firm. "Here is," said the Englishman, taking a quantity of papers from his pocket, "an assignment of 200,000 francs to our house by Monsieur de Bouville, the inspector of prisons, to whom they are due. You acknowledge, of course, that you owe this sum to him?" "Yes, he placed the money in my hands at 4.5% nearly 5 years ago." "When are you to pay?" "Half the 15th of this month, half the 15th of next." "Just so. And now here are 32,500 francs payable shortly. They are all signed by you, and assigned to our house by the holders." "I recognize them," said Morrel, whose face was suffused, as he thought that, for the first time in his life, he would be unable to honor his own signature. "Is this all?" "No, for I have at the end of the month these bills which have been assigned to us by the house of Pascal and the house of Wilde and Turner of Marseilles, amounting to nearly 55,000 francs. In all, 287,500 francs. It is impossible to describe what Morrel suffered during this enumeration. 287,500 francs, repeated he. "Yes, sir," replied the Englishman. "I will not," continued he, after a moment's silence, "conceal from you that while your probity and exactitude up to this moment are universally acknowledged, yet the report is current in Marseilles that you are not able to meet your liabilities." At this most brutal speech, Morrel turned deathly pale. One thing I was kind of struck by in today's passage, accumulating over the course of this chapter about Morrel's situation, is that there's a parallel, I think, and I'm beginning to see that perhaps Dumas loves parallels. There's a parallel between Morrel and Daddy Dante. While Morrel isn't literally starving, at least yet, he is at a point in his downfall that it seems like Daddy Dante had gone through at one point. Remember when Dante first arrived, what was it, chapter 2 or 3, and went to see his father? There was a moment when he realized that his father had used up the money that Dante had left for him and was living on basically nothing. It's a situation that again happened after Dante was in prison and led to his father's starvation and death. Now, Morrel, I think in a slightly different light, could be seen as a somewhat paternal figure to Dante, if you want to go so far as calling a benefactor paternal. But unlike his father, he's catching Morrel at a different point in his descent. He wasn't able to be there for his father either time when he was initially out on the Ferron and his father was home starving for that 3-month period, or when he was imprisoned and watched his father dwindle away to death. Now it seems like, well, I wasn't able to be there for my father, my actual father, my bloodline, but I might be able to be here at a time to prevent the tragedy befalling another paternal figure of mine. This is where I have to acknowledge my performance sometimes. I always, not having read this book before, I am going in, I'm cold reading, something I was terrible at when I was acting out in Los Angeles for so many years. But I'm cold reading this, so I don't know how to play the characters. I'm just reading and taking cues from what's on the page. I'm playing this in a way where Dante, as this Englishman, is not being cruel necessarily in throwing all these facts and figures out at Morrel, but doing so because he knows that whatever suffering Morrel is going through in the moment of hearing how much he owes is going to be all the grander when Dante inevitably figures out a way to make it all go away. I don't know what that's going to be. Is he going to reveal himself to Morrel? Is he going to just tear up all the bills and throw them into the fireplace? You know, is he going to give Morrel away? Well, here's a question for you. So, as I'm playing this out, and this is one of those stupid speculations that's going to prove me right or wrong or otherwise by the end of this chapter, I would assume. But what is it that, if we are Dante, how are we going to reward Morrel? Do we just reveal ourselves as Dante with a bunch of money saying, hey, you don't have to worry anymore. I'm going to, pay all your debts and get you back on track and we'll be good. Sure, that's one way to go about it. But do you lose something by doing that? Like in an age when respectability and self-respect were so important to people, Morrel might accept that help, but he loses face a little bit. So does Dante set up a situation without revealing himself and allow Morrel, like, is the reward not going to be money, but is the reward going to be allowing Morrel a way to pull himself out of the hole without losing face by doing it all himself and not just inheriting a windfall of money, an inheritance of whatever Dante wants to give to him? In a way, not reversing the benefactor thing from Morrel being Dante's benefactor to Dante being Morrel's benefactor. But, Dante has so much money now that he can basically change reality and play out scenarios that allow him to, buy time and set up situations where, like the David Fincher movie, The Game with Michael Douglas, where the whole movie is predicated on a game that is set up for this man to go through this mystery. And is it real? Is it not real? Doesn't matter. There's this big force in the world that can set up situations where Michael Douglas can go through an experience and come out the other side of it for good or ill. But, Dante is essentially that big corporation now that can change reality for whoever he interacts with. Do we think Dante has more money than Fernand and Danglars? That's an interesting thing I'm going to think about before we get to them. But anyway, I guess I was going into this assuming that Dante was just going to buy up everything and put Morrel back on the right track. But it would be more interesting if Dante set up a situation for Morrel to be able to dig himself out. I guess there's only one way to find that out, and that's to continue reading more of chapter 29. We're not even at the halfway point yet, folks, so we got a long way to go here. So join me here tomorrow as we continue forth. Until then, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.